subject. Agboje Agamokwade, President, the Nigerian Stock Exchange. There can't be any question whether the concept of finance is important for every woman, and this book brings it to life. Aris provides insight, real-world examples and practical advice about the importance of getting it right. She has again showed us money is a partner in a relationship that must thrive for us to enjoy. Completely educative, easy to read, most enjoyable. Osai Alal Head, ACT Foundation. Unprecedented. A Nigerian woman's answer to rich dad, poor dad. Using prose and a mirror, Aris demystifies the art of money-making by analyzing and conquering the African woman's fear of investments. She tackles the financial taboos and shackling mindsets using our everyday realities to connect. A must-read. Bolanle Austin Peters. Producer, director, and founder, Terra Culture and BAP Productions. An entertaining way to learn about money, ushering in a new narrative of Africa, specifically of the African woman in the 21st century, her perspective, her ambitions, her journey, flaws and all, but wholly hers. Alhaji Aliko Dangote, Gone, Chairman and CEO, Dangote Group. Great storytelling with a strong message and focus on changing or improving your view on money matters. You have a good laugh, set in a familiar place, and most of all you close the book determined to change your money habits. Tara Fela Duro Toyi founder, House of Tara. A must-read for anyone looking to have a better understanding of financial literacy. Aris provides a straight-talking, practical, step-by-step approach to a better financial future. A great self-help guide for the young, driven, entrepreneurial African woman. Peace Hyde correspondent, Forbes Africa. Aris puts an interesting and picturesque spin on how women can better manage her money in the book The Smart Money Woman. She addresses the issue of money management in a way every woman can relate to. The style is mellifluous yet profound in its message. Betty Irabor publisher, Genevieve Magazine. Aris wraps fundamental truths in humor and real-life relatable experiences, impacting knowledge and a guide to making better choices financially. Such a breath of fresh air for the 21st century woman on her way to financial freedom. Toke Makinwa, celebrity and media entrepreneur. Money is a hard topic to think and talk about, but Aris breaks it down and removes the fear and discomfort for young African women. Afua Ose co-founder, She Leads Africa. The Smart Money Woman is the modern African woman's book, and Zuri's captivating story will keep you turning the page. The real kicker comes in the smart money lessons included in every chapter. Easily digestible but vital lessons on how to get started up the financial success ladder. You get double the value with this book, an entertaining read and a valuable education. Well done, Aris. Uche Pedro founder, Belanija the Smart Money Woman. An African girl's journey to financial freedom. Arese Ugwu. Copyright 2016 Aris Ugwu. The moral right of the author has been asserted. Apart from any fair dealing for the purposes of research or private study, or criticism or review, as permitted under the Copyright, Designs and Patents Act 1988, this publication may only be reproduced, stored or transmitted, in any form or by any means, with the prior permission in writing of the publishers, or in the case of reprographic reproduction in accordance with the terms of licenses issued by the Copyright Licensing Agency. Inquiries concerning reproduction outside those terms should be sent to the publishers. This is a work of fiction. Names, characters, businesses, places, events and incidents are either the products of the author's imagination or used in a fictitious manner. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or actual events is purely coincidental. Matador 9 Priory Business Park, Wistow Road, Kibworth Beecham, Leicestershire. LE80RX telephone 0116 279 2299 email Books at troubadour.co.uk. Web, Twitter, @MatadorBooks. ISBN 9781785,197,603. British Library Cataloguing in Publication Data. A catalogue record for this book is available from the British Library. Matador is an imprint of Troubadour Publishing Limited. Meet the author. Aris is the founder of smartmoneyafrica.org, a personal finance platform for the African millennial. As a contributor to the Guardian newspaper, the host on Guardian TV's new personal finance show, Your Life, Your Money, and a co-host for Analyze This on Ndani TV, she has helped shape the new narrative on personal finance in the media. She serves on several boards including House of Tara and the Nigeria Higher Education Foundation as a non-executive director, and is also an associate member of WIMBIZ, serving on its planning committee since 2015. She was most recently a 2015 finalist for the Access Bank W Award for Young Professional of the Year. After 8 years working in wealth management, Aris is now engaging young Africans on the importance of financial literacy and the impact it has on helping them get money, keep money and grow money as they drive the continent forward. She holds an MSc in Economic Development from University College London, UCL, and a BSc in Business and Management from Aston Business School, Birmingham. She is also an alumna of the Lagos Business School, INSEAD Abu Dhabi, and the London Business School Executive Education Programs. For my daughter Zikara, I hope this inspires you to live life fearlessly. Acknowledgements. I'm officially an author, guys. This journey has been unreal, and there are a number of people I would like to thank because I couldn't have done it without them. My parents, who taught me early on to be fearless in the pursuit of my dreams. My dad, who started talking to me about the capital markets from the age of 7. My mum, who taught me the value of money and made me track my expenses every term and threatened not to give me pocket money if I didn't. Thank you. My siblings Asokan, Kolapo and Ivy, who are absolute rock stars. You took the time to read all the different versions of this book and were my first set of critics and encouragers. I love you. My BFFs Nadine Domingo, Nena Okoye, Mariah Luciano Gabriel, Toke Makinwa and Eniola Taiwo. You all listened to me go on and about the characters in the book like they were our friends in real life and allowed me to test out dialogue. I love you guys. Thank you for your patience and support. To my mentors, Belanle Austin Peters, Tara Fela Duro Toyi and Osai Alal, who have all taught me that no goal is too big, continuously challenge me to set new goals and smash them. Your investment in me can never be repaid. I am extremely grateful. To my boy besties, Cyril Akpofa, who has been on this smart money journey with me since day zero and has been the technological backbone of this entire operation. I couldn't have done this without you. To Toby Asoba, who, when I thought I couldn't do this, supported through my many meltdowns. You are awesome. To Fela Duro Toyi, who despite his extremely busy schedule would talk to me for 2 hours at a time on the phone when I got stuck. I am blessed to have you in my life. To Steve Harris, Mr. Ruthless Execution, we both know this book would have never happened if you didn't keep me accountable, so thank you for sticking with me even when I was running away. I'm extremely grateful. To Nimiak and Kugbe, who graciously agreed to write the foreword for this book, took the time to read every chapter and give me her notes even when she was on holiday in St. Lucia and I was stalking her. Thank you so much. To my editor Tolu Orokoya, who came on board at the tail end but has had a huge impact and made this book so much stronger. It was a grueling process, the discourse, the early mornings, the late nights, the disagreements over character development, the way you fell in love with the characters combined with your commitment to the work inspires me greatly. Just know you'll never be able to get rid of me. You have a friend for life. I will always be grateful to Tude for introducing us. To my lawyer and friend Mickey aka Neo Miracoli, who had to deal with all my ridiculous timelines. God bless you. To my assistant Temi, who has worked with me for only 6 months but has been there through all the behind-the-scenes struggles. I appreciate you. To my WIMBIZ family. WIMBIZ raised me. Thank you for creating a sustainable platform that empowers and facilitates opportunities for young women like me. To all the people who lent me their platforms even before I even knew what smart money was going to be and helped me find my voice. Belanija, Genevieve Magazine, The Guardian, Indani TV and Anaya. Thank you. To members of the Smart Money Movement, your quest to learn more about personal finance, your questions, your emails, your comments on social media, Instagram especially informed a lot of the solutions in this book. I am humbled by your constant support. To my daughter, Ikra, who had to contend with the fact that this smart money movement is my second child and her baby sister. Instead of getting jealous, she would tease me by calling me smart money, then tell me she wants to be like me when she grows up. I love you, baby. I do this for you. To God Almighty for giving me this gift and helping me complete this book despite all the obstacles that were thrown my way. Baba God, I thank you. Foreword. When Aris invited me to write the foreword for her first book, The Smart Money Woman, I did not hesitate for 1 minute. Having observed her money ministry through her Smart Money blog, news articles, and television shows, I applaud the huge impact that she is having on the African woman and beyond. It is therefore a real delight to welcome this unique addition to the world of personal finance. The Smart Money Woman is a charming piece of work that will educate those that care to take concrete steps to change their financial lives. This book offers the unique combination of a light-hearted fictional novel in Erez's compelling and engaging style, filled with familiar, vivid characters, accompanied by serious underlying smart money lessons, a beginner's guide to managing her personal finance. For many people, the subject of personal financial management can be somewhat daunting. The book presents the basic concepts of earning, budgeting, spending, borrowing, saving, investing, as well as the behavioral and emotional aspects of money in a practical way that makes it easy to personalize. In narrative, Aris perfectly captures the picture of a young Nigerian woman, Zuri, whose intellect, educational background, and looks have presented her with great prospects. Yet she comes close to losing it all before the realization that her lifestyle could destroy those same prospects. Whilst the main focus is on Zuri and her journey to financial awakening, the rich characterization of other primary actors woven through the tale makes it a must-read. Erez's strong background in wealth management more than qualifies her to present this treasure trove of smart money lessons. She is a role model who demonstrates her teachings. If you imbibe sound financial habits in your youth, with consistent hard work, and a dedicated savings and investment plan, you can build a life of long-term financial security and enjoy a lifestyle of comfort and dignity. The underlying message in The Smart Money Woman is a positive one. With determination, commitment and time, you can transform your financial life. Building wealth is more about how much you keep, not about how much you spend, she writes in the book. It is the habit, the discipline of setting something aside regularly to meet your financial goals. Having observed the money personality of people of substantial means over close to 3 decades, I have come to the conclusion that there is a discipline associated with creating, building, retaining and transmitting wealth. Those who really seek to accumulate wealth and pass it on in a structured way, do so by setting clear goals and then by consistent saving and long-term investing in a diversified asset portfolio towards achieving them. They also maintain a frugal mindset and a cautious approach to spending. They do look for bargains, they do buy assets on sale and look for discounts, they do vet the restaurant bill, and they do plan ahead for major spending, and most of all, they do not waste money. Acquiring and maintaining long-term wealth is a process. There usually are no shortcuts, but the rewards over time are well beyond the thrills of instant gratification. If you are looking for a book that succeeds in unraveling the often perplexing and complex world of money management in the form of a novel, then Aris Wubwu's The Smart Money Woman is for you. An engaging read, it brings the subject of personal finance to life. This book is for every woman, married, single, divorced, widowed, and for every man with women in their lives. Nick and Kugbe CEO Bestman Games, Money Matters with Nimi Lagos, Nigeria, June 2016. Table of Contents. Acknowledgements forward. Broke money fears. Where is your money going? Dealing with debt, surviving emergencies, money goals, the spending plan, the power of networking, life happens, the long game, earning more, becoming a smart money woman. Chapter 1. Broke. I can't believe this is happening to me. Zuri panicked as she shook her head and stared at her account balance. It was the middle of the month and she had a little over 80,000 left in her bank. To be fair, this would seem like a lot to some, but her expenses told a different story. This balance would barely make a dent in the bills she had piled up, and she wasn't expecting any new funds till the end of the month. Even then, she wouldn't be able to cover the bills that had just arrived. She stared hopelessly at the papers in front of her. A bill from her mechanic for what she thought were minor repairs had ballooned to 200,000. Her car was now stuck at his workshop until she was able to make payment. There was a letter from her landlord pointing out her service charge bills for the last 3 months, 430,000 naira in total, were unpaid, and he was threatening to cut her off if payment wasn't made by the end of the month. She had just visited her gynecologist for a routine checkup, only to discover that she had fibroids. The procedure Dr. Emeka had told her she might need would cost 950,000, and her HMO had just written to inform her that her plan did not cover it. Dr. Emeka was the best, and sometimes the best cost a lot. She did the math and it didn't add up. She earned 600,000 a month after taxes from her job as a senior manager at Richmond Developments, a real estate firm. Until this moment, she had considered herself very lucky. She had a great job that paid well. She lived in an upmarket part of Lagos in Lekki Phase 1, in a 2-bedroom serviced apartment that overlooked the water. She drove a second-hand Mercedes ML 500, and it was awesome, until the engine started acting up. She could take 1 or 2 trips abroad a year to destinations like Dubai, New York or London. To her, that was the ideal life of a single, uber-successful 28-year-old African woman. So how could she explain to anyone that she was flat broke? She still couldn't understand it herself. She wasn't overly extravagant. Yes, she liked the good life, but she wouldn't consider herself one of those people living beyond their means. In fact, she hated that term. She could just hear Auntie Iabo's voice in her head saying, "You young people of nowadays, your eyes are too big." She always rolled her eyes when she heard that. The fact is, old people didn't understand. If you worked hard, you deserved to play hard. YOLO. You only live once, Abby. As long as you were smart enough to earn a living and keep making more money, being was not your portion, IJN. Except now, Zuri could see that some savings would have come in handy to take care of the financial black hole laid out in front of her. She worked hard so she could one day enjoy the lifestyle she had always desired. Living comfortably in the best part of town, never having to worry about bills, a designer wardrobe that would rival fashion icon Toke Makinwa, shopping trips to Paris and month-long summers in the south of France. To her, that was the ideal life. It wasn't like she expected to own a home or anything at this point in her life. That was the responsibility of her future husband. Still, she had no land, no stock portfolio, or anything else that had real value to speak of. There were no assets she could sell to keep her head above water. What about my bags? Zuri thought. She knew there were some excellent pieces in there, which she had collected over time. Chanel, Alexander McQueen, Celine, and Louis Vuitton bags she didn't even carry anymore. Chai. How exactly will I sell them? She wasn't sure there was even a market for used designer bags in Lagos. Everyone was too proud, and if she started asking friends and acquaintances to buy them from her, it would certainly be an indication that something was seriously wrong. Then the rumors and gossip would start. There had to be another way. Her doorbell rang. Tami. She was supposed to have lunch with her at Casper and Gambini's. She had seriously been craving one of their famous burgers all week, but her new circumstances were cramping her style. She had to re-evaluate her spending. But before she tackled that problem, first she had to figure out how she was going to explain this to Tami. She went to open the door. Tami stood there, arms folded across her chest. Zuri forced a smile. Hey, babe, sorry, I completely forgot about our lunch plans. Tami rolled her eyes. Forgot, Key. Trust me. The essay I'm trying to sort out right now is doing my head in. She could say this to Tami. They had been best friends for years and spoke freely with each other. Anyone else in Lagos, it was best to keep your mouth shut and pretend everything was great. Before dem carry your matter. Well, I'm coming in because I'm starving, Tami said. Zuri stepped back and let her friend head straight to the kitchen. They'd met just before they started secondary school in Benin City. They had seen each other through common entrance exams, boy drama, dramatic weight gains and the battle to lose it all, but they were the complete opposite of each other, so it was a wonder their friendship had lasted so long. She was one of those friends you shouldn't attend a party with if your intention was to spend time together, especially if you were the quiet type. She would leave you hanging. It would start with a string of hello darlings, quickly followed by a series of air kisses with 80% of the guests at the party, leading to her being dragged from one meaningless conversation to the next, and ending with leaving her partner stranded. It was never intentional, but it was always annoying. Zuri shook her head ruefully. Tami was an extrovert, the charismatic social butterfly in the group of friends. People were drawn to her. She had flawless caramel-colored skin, a petite frame, and a smile that could stop most men in their tracks. It wasn't her beauty that drew most people to her, though. She had such a genuine spirit, such a giving aura about her, that people liked her instantly. She was also fiercely loyal, which was probably why their friendship had lasted so long. Zuri actually felt slightly better about her situation. She had someone to confide in and distract her from her money woes. Plus, Tami always had gist, so it was a welcome distraction. The sound of Tami slamming the refrigerator door interrupted Zuri's thoughts. So you don't even have food in this house? Tami said with mock disdain in her voice. You know, here say I know get money. Zuri laughed. Tami rolled her eyes. When I say find a rich boyfriend, you won't hear. Leave me alone, Joe, Zuri said. Girl, if you had a man, all this would be story. Tami smiled. How much is the bill? Not bill, bills, Zuri said. And they add up to just over £1 million. Tami's eyes widened. Seriously, Tami, I don't know how I'm going to get out of this mess. Even if my salary hits my account today, I still won't be able to pay them all. Tami shook her head. Honestly, you need to get a man. You need someone to support you. All this independent woman nonsense you are doing is what will get you in trouble. I've always told you, your parents let you stay in Obodo Oyinbo too long. Living abroad for so long is what has got you thinking like an Oyinbo woman. This is Nigeria, so you better start behaving like an African woman. Zuri laughed. Tami had a policy never to date married men, but the men she did go out with definitely had to be rich and in a position to help her, gifting her with upper-class tickets to whatever destination tickled her fancy, rent for her studio, and closets full of labels from time to time. She was a successful fashion designer and worked from a tiny studio in Lekki. But Zuri was pretty sure Tommy's lifestyle was supplemented by her very wealthy father and the string of rich boyfriends she had dated since university. "Let me give you gist," Tommy said. "Do you remember Amanda from high school? She was a few years ahead of us. Tall, light-skinned. Vaguely. You were so annoying. You never remember anything. She was friends with Adesua and that lot." Zuri nodded. "Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I remember her. I didn't know her well, but what did she do?" "She has hit." Tommy clapped her hands together gleefully. "She is dating Senny Foster, the CEO of Foster Inc. and a big boy in the oil sector. He bought her a BMW, a flat in Parkview, and, apparently, a flat in St. John's Wood in London, all in the space of 18 months. Zuri stared at her for a second. "But, isn't he married? I could have sworn I saw pictures of him and his wife on Belanija, attending that Balagun wedding in Dubai a few weeks ago." "Married? Fire. So," Tommy hissed, "why are you acting as if it's news? None of these Lagos big boys are faithful to their wives. Don't be so naive." Zuri rolled her eyes. "He is hardly a boy, Tommy. Isn't he in his 50s? It doesn't matter. He has money, so he is a Lagos big boy. Finish. Anyway, that was not the point of my story. Amanda is now in the big leagues. I hear he is so in love with her, he is even ready to marry her as a second wife. Word on the street is, he is begging her to have a baby with him." "Harbor, Tommy. A married man. Stop it. He can't want her to have his babies. I'm sure that part is a lie. Zuri couldn't imagine ever settling to be a second wife. Listen, you are here, complaining about a bill of 1 million naira. If you had a boyfriend like that, do you think you would be sitting here trying to figure out how to get out of debt? Not that I subscribe to dating married men, but rich men sha," Tommy laughed. "Anyway, I have to get going. I need to eat. And it doesn't look like I'm going to find anything here. Pele, dear, I got carried away with this money wahala." Zuri laughed. "Okay." Tommy accepted with a wink. "Maybe by next week you'll have met a rich boyfriend," she teased as she waved goodbye. After Tommy left, Zuri began to wonder if she was truly naive or overly conservative. Was it wrong to think that there was something fundamentally wrong about trading sex for money? The problem with those sorts of relationships, though, was the power dynamics. In relationships where one was always on the receiving end of the cash, money often became a weapon. She did not want to be controlled. Then she realized that maybe the joke was on her. She was sitting in her living room judging someone who had all their bills paid while she had no clue how she was going to pay her own. She thought of Falabi, a mistake she had made in her early 20s. A mutual friend introduced them and she was mesmerized by his swag and attitude to life. He wasn't handsome in a conventional way, but he carried himself with a confidence that drew people in. Back then, all the girls wanted to date him and all the guys wanted to be friends with him. Some of it probably had to do with the fact that he was the son of a billionaire and he certainly thought the world revolved around him. Falabi Tajuddin thought he was entitled to behave badly because he had a lot of money to throw around. They dated for almost a year and she definitely got free trips to New York and London out of it, as well as some really expensive bags, but his arrogance and lack of direction put her. He was spoiled, with no future ambition of his own. As far as Falabi was concerned, his parents' money meant he didn't actually have to work for a living. Eventually, Zuri realized, despite all the luxuries his money could afford her, she couldn't respect a man who had no ambition of his own and expected to sponge off his parents for his entire life. His behavior was appalling and in the end it was an incident that occurred outside Club 57 that became the straw that broke the camel's back. Zuri found it extremely irritating that he had to shout, "Do you know who my father is?" to make a point to the bouncer, who had told them they had to wait outside because the club was at capacity. She realized that she couldn't protect a man like that, no matter how much money he had access to. She wanted to be with a man that had ambition. At the very least, ambition that exceeded her own, and was willing to work hard to make his dreams come true. After Falabi, she dated Paul, who was extremely ambitious but that didn't work out either. Zuri sighed as she remembered how excited she had been when they first met at a Euro money workshop in Paris. Paul got her attention on the first day of the workshop. She was caught off guard by extreme good looks and easy charm. They were the only Nigerians on the program, so they naturally gravitated toward each other. She was intrigued by how engaging their conversations were. He was smart, funny and devastatingly handsome, and it was love Wantintian until their relationship began to unravel a few months later. Paul was a hustler and she loved that about him. He was a true example of the Nigerian dream. He lost his dad at a very young age and things were very tough for him and his 6 siblings growing up in Ebonyi, but he clawed his way out of poverty by studying hard and leveraging on every opportunity that came his way. He studied engineering at University of Awka in Anambra State, and then landed a scholarship to pursue a master's degree at the University of Texas. He had risen to be vice president at CIS, a reputable private equity firm in Lagos, and was doing quite well for himself, but he seemed to have a chip on his shoulder. It wasn't obvious at first because he seemed so comfortable in who he was. However, months later it became obvious that in his bid to adopt a certain Lagos big boy persona, he lied about everything. Big things, small things, it didn't seem to matter. It didn't take Zuri long to realize that you couldn't build a solid relationship with someone you couldn't trust at all. They could be having drinks with a group of friends and she would overhear him telling someone he was going to South Africa at the weekend because he had a meeting with some tech guys, when she knew for a fact he was going to Ebonyi to visit his family. At first she found it hilarious, but as the incidents increased, she got irritated by the fact that he wasn't comfortable in who he was. He was ashamed of his background and found the need to pretend and lie for no apparent reason. Eventually, they broke up when she realized that she had developed the habit of second-guessing his every sentence. It got to a point that if Paul told her the sky was blue, she would have to check, in case it was actually red. It was difficult to build a relationship with someone you couldn't trust. Zuri shook her head, trying to clear her thoughts. She didn't want to be thinking about old boyfriends right now. But it was funny, wasn't it? How a conversation about money almost always turned into a conversation about men. All join in the wahala. It seemed like something that was culturally ingrained in African women. The idea that money was not fundamentally a woman's issue, it was a man's role to worry about finances. If a woman tabled the matter of money troubles with her friends, the solution was almost always find a man to look after you. It occurred to her that if a man had confided in his friends or family the situation she was in, their advice wasn't likely to be, go and find a sugar mummy. Zuri was certain that a man was not the answer to her problem. She wasn't ready to date married men like Seni for money or rely on self-obsessed boy men like Falabi, or men with a chip on their shoulder like Paul. None of those scenarios fit the fairy tale ending she had always dreamed of. She would figure a way out of this situation herself. The man she was meant to be with would show up when God said it was time. She was smart, educated, and her future was bright. I got this, she said, trying to psych herself up. She just needed to figure a way out of being broke. Simple math. Either make more money or cut back on spending. She needed to raise money to get out of this financial mess. The question was, how? Smart money lesson. What broke really means. In sub-Saharan Africa, less than 1% are born into wealth and under 10% are born into the middle class. In general, we are not taught in any formal framework how to keep money or grow it. Basic personal finance skills are difficult to learn. As a result, even when a young adult starts earning, and they need to survive. They end up living from paycheck to paycheck because they think about their incomes largely in terms of spending and haven't learned how to save or build assets in proportion to what they earn. Broke means, if you lost your primary source of income today, you wouldn't be able to maintain the lifestyle you have become accustomed to because you have no assets to rely on. Like Zuri, many people have built expensive lives they can't sustain because they continuously spend everything they earn and as such, have a revolving door for their money. We must dismiss this idea that we will always make more money. We have a finite amount of productive years to work. Many people will never be as agile both mentally and physically as they are now. What happens in 30 years when you can no longer work as hard and have no cushion to fall back on? Poverty and dependence on others is inevitable. In order to build wealth, this mentality has to change. Developing a wealthy mindset requires the understanding of the concept that the way you spend, invest, and manage 10 naira is the way you'll spend, invest, and manage 10 million. What it really means to be wealthy. As a society, we tend to measure financial success based on spending patterns, but our metrics are faulty. For example, Zuri lives in one of the best parts of Lagos, has a decent job and lives a lifestyle that many dream of. Zuri is one of the hundreds of thousands moving up the income earning scale, able to afford material things that were once out of their parents' reach. To a bystander, she has an enviable life and there's an automatic assumption that she is wealthy. However, building wealth is more about how much you keep. Broke people and rich people approach the same amount of money differently, and here's why. Broke people think it is about how much you earn, but rich people know it's about how much of your income you are able to keep and convert into assets that can provide you with an income in the future. The fundamental difference is that wealthy people understand the relationship between how we earn and how we spend, and they know where the balance is. Active income is the income you get from services rendered. It is usually your income from your job or business. For example, if you work at a bank and you make 300,000 a month as your salary, that's your active income. Or, if you run a catering business and you make 300,000 in profits every month, that's your active income. Passive income in simple terms is money that you make while you are sleeping. It is the income you get regularly from investments you've already made. Good examples are dividends from a stock portfolio, or rental income from a property you own. What is financial freedom? When passive income exceeds your expenses. Ideally, the goal is to get to a point where the assets you've accumulated can pay you enough of an income to pay for your lifestyle. For example, rental income from a property you own can buy you a car or a holiday to the south of France. Or, the dividend checks from a stock portfolio can buy you a Chanel bag. Exercise. Net worth. Calculate your net worth. Your net worth is your assets minus your liabilities, and it gives you a snapshot of where you stand financially. 1. Make a list of everything you own of value: stocks, property, land, fixed deposits, cash, gold. 2. Make a list of everything you owe: mortgage, car loan, general baisse. 3. Subtract your total assets from your total liabilities. 4. Don't be ashamed or afraid of the number. Calculating your net worth now will let you know your starting point. 5. The figure is not as important as the trends in net worth. As long as you make a commitment to keep growing it, you'll be fine. Chapter 2. Money Fears. It was 3 a.m. in the morning and Zuri was staring at the ceiling as the latest episode of Scandal flickered on her television screen. She couldn't sleep. Her mind kept bouncing from one random thought to another. This was the third week in a row that she'd had to reach for her sleeping pills at this ungodly hour after several futile attempts at sleep. The last couple of weeks she had been worried sick about her money situation. Even though she thought about nothing else these days, a solution wasn't forthcoming and the problems certainly weren't going away. Mr. Akeke, her landlord, had been calling for weeks. He had left message upon message with the security guards saying they had to meet soon. He even rang her bell twice that week, but she pretended not to be home. Zuri cringed. It was mortifying. Even her mechanic Ola had been calling her non-stop and had resorted to sending her so many WhatsApp messages, she'd had to block him. But she couldn't hide forever. That WhatsApp is too intrusive, Seth, she thought. Zuri wasn't ready to deal with any of them yet until she found a solution. She had even started having nightmares about meeting Mr. Right and discovering she had infertility issues. She didn't need a shrink to tell her what the dreams meant. They were obviously a symptom of her refusal to confront her fibroids. She had cancelled 4 appointments with her doctor because, let's face it, she wouldn't be able to pay. She drifted into a fitful sleep, then jolted awake when her alarm went off at 6 o'clock. As she struggled to get dressed for work, she stared at her face in the mirror. Her skin had never looked worse because she hadn't had her regular facial with Dr. Bruce at Oasis Med Spa in months. She turned to her favorite pick-me-up, a glycolic skin care treatment that was only available from utopiabeauty.com. Not that she would be able to afford any of that anytime soon. At 7:40, her Uber driver called to say he was at the gate. As Ola still had her car in his shop, she now had to take taxis to work, yet another expense she could ill afford. He stared out the window as the Toyota Camry drove past the Lekki Ikoyi tollgate, and she soon tuned out the driver's chatter about his family and the stress of driving in Lagos. She mentally ran through a list of potential loan sources. What about Falabi? Her ex had been reaching out a lot lately to hang out, but that sort of hanging out probably meant between the sheets. To make matters worse, if she asked him for the money, he would most certainly expect sex as collateral for the loan. And really, was she that desperate yet? Then again, Falabi had quite the big mouth. Within a week the whole of Lagos would know he had given her money, and what she had given him in return. His ex, Sheila, had learned the hard way when he boasted about changing her parade, and buying her first ticket abroad. Why am I even considering it? Turning ASWO for a loan. Yee. When she got to work, Thelma the receptionist beamed at her as she breezed past. Good morning, Zuri. I love your dress. Thank you, love, Zuri replied with a faint smile. Thelma was a very sweet girl but all NA wash. She was a newbie, so she wanted to stay in everyone's good graces. Zuri knew her face looked like crap because she had been too exhausted to bother with full makeup this morning, but her dress was lovely. It was a red Karina dress from one of her favorite Nigerian designers, Lady Bieber. It hid her insecurities, like the slight bulge in her lower stomach, and accentuated her best assets. Frankly, she felt like a boss lady every time she wore a Lady Bieber dress. The dress gave her the confidence boost she needed to participate in this project meeting with her boss that she was now 20 minutes late to. He was going to have a fit. Lateness was something he abhorred, and she didn't even have the energy to defend herself. We were wondering when you would join us, Mr. Tunde said when she arrived. This meeting started at 8 a.m. and it is now 8:25. I'm sorry, sir. There was traffic, she said as she hurriedly plugged in her flash drive to begin her presentation. Madam, this is Lagos. There is always traffic. Please, let's start with your presentation on the Georgia Heights development. As Zuri ran through her presentation, it dawned on her that the empty-looking presentation was unimpressive. Still, she stumbled through the best she could, but she knew she was in for it when Mr. Tunde told her that he wanted to speak to her. Did I make a mistake hiring this returnee? Was all that was running through Mr. Tunde's head as he watched her fumble through her half-baked presentation. Zuri Guabadia had worked for the firm for 3 years and she was a smart girl, but she'd never quite reached the superstar status he'd expected of her. What worried him the most was her complacency. That is the problem with these returnees. They think they are too smart. As far as he was concerned, they all thought that their fancy degrees were all they needed. They expected fat salaries, no real experience, just phone, and the degrees. Frankly, he was sick of it. He had fired a few of them last year. Those ones had no work ethic. Zuri was one of the last. To be honest, she didn't act as entitled as the others, but he expected more from her. When she first joined the firm, she was eager to please, and she closed more sales than he expected from a newcomer. She'd been impressive from the first, sharp with personal allure that had made her a hit with the clients. She'd also been a hit with some of the senior partners too, but she'd made it quite clear that her rise to the top would be completely by merit, not favoritism. Mr. Tunde chuckled as he recalled the first 100 million naira sale Zuri had closed right in front of him. It had been Mr. Obako, one of those clients who had millions of dollars in the bank, showed avid interest whenever Richmond Developments completed a new development, requested countless meetings but never managed to actually buy anything. The company only entertained his requests because there was always a possibility of a sale, since he actually had money and he was good friends with several influential members of the board. He had put Zuri on this particular account because none of the other senior partners would touch it, and she seemed personable enough to manage Obako's quirks. He had joined the meeting with the intention of observing her sales pitch and to give her some follow-up tips. Instead, he'd been shocked by the finesse of her delivery and the way she skillfully dealt with Obako's inane questions. That day, Mr. Tunde knew she had the makings of a star. For the past 18 months, however, he'd felt as though Zuri's star was more than just a bit tarnished. Her performance was average, and it looked like she had plateaued and was content to keep coasting. She wasn't present and definitely wasn't engaged. The ambition and hunger to learn that had seemed to possess her when she first started at the firm had obviously left her. Mr. Tunde felt invested in her development, because in some ways he thought of himself as Zuri's unofficial mentor, but every attempt to get her to get back in the game had been met with excuses. For the past 2 years he had nominated her as one of the delegates to attend a conference the company sponsored. Women in Management, Business and Public Service, or more simply, WIMBIS, was the largest substantial women's organization in Nigeria that played a significant role in empowering working Nigerian women. He thought it would be great for her development, but each year, she came up with weak excuses why she couldn't attend. This year he wouldn't give her the option. Zuri tapped nervously as she waited. She knew she'd been late, but it hadn't been that late. And yes, her presentation had been a bit shoddy, but it wasn't like she was generally incompetent. He should give me a break, Joe, Zuri thought, exasperated. The last thing she needed today was a lecture from the self-righteous Mr. Tunde. He was a great boss for the most part, but he could be a real pain in the ass sometimes. I was very disappointed in your presentation today. You mixed up a lot of the details, said Mr. Tunde. In fact, to be honest, you haven't done any good work in months. He frowned. I don't know what's going on with you, but you need to get your act together. Zuri had the grace to look shamefaced. I'm sorry, sir. I'll admit I was ill-prepared, but it won't happen again. Mr. Tunde shook his head. That's what you said the last few times you've come to my meetings with substandard work. You are on the end of a very short rope, and I'm tempted to sack you. In these harsh economic times, we have no room for slackers, and I don't carry passengers on my team. Everyone has to perform. I had high hopes for you, Zuri, but recently, you just seem to be completely okay with mediocrity. He shook his head again. That's the problem with you returnees. You expect fat salaries for mediocre work. You want to furnish these lavish lifestyles but not put in the effort that's required. I put you on this account because Obako is a difficult client, and I knew that if you applied yourself, you'd be able to handle it, but you haven't applied yourself. You're just coasting along. You're doing what you need to do to survive and nothing more. He looked at her closely. Zuri, you have become complacent and it's rather worrying. But then again, maybe real estate isn't what you want to do anymore. Zuri's heart skipped a beat. No, she couldn't be fired right now. It is, sir, it is. She looked at him, doing her best not to say too much for fear of bursting into tears. Her body was hot from embarrassment and she was choking with unshed tears. Mr. Tunde might be a nag and a bit grumpy, but was one of the greatest proponents of her success since she joined the firm, showing her the ropes and honing her skills. She hated to admit it, but his opinion mattered to her. His respect mattered to her. I think you need something too. How do the kids say it these days? Ginger, you need a fresh perspective, so I have nominated you as one of the delegates for this year's WIMBIZ conference, Mr. Tunde said. The theme is leadership, stepping up and standing out. Quote. Zuri raised her eyebrows. This was an unpleasant surprise. She couldn't bear the thought of going to one of those women conferences. This was not the first time that he had tried to get her to go to WIMBIZ, but she wasn't a fan of organization because they seemed very political and cliquey, and she felt like the women who were interested in going to such events had to be ready to suck up to powerful women. Although she had never attended WIMBIZ before, she had attended a few similar conferences in the early days of her move back to Nigeria, and they were boring, to say the least. As she opened her mouth to protest, she saw the disapproving look on Mr. Tunde's face and decided against it. Now was not the time to test him. Attend the conference this year and write a report about everything you learned and give us feedback about business trends and the workshops you participate in. Is that clear? Yes, sir. Good. Then you may go. He scowled as he waved her out of his office. As she stood at her front door that evening and riffled through her Celine tote to find her keys, she heard footsteps approaching. At first she thought it was one of her neighbors. She heard Mr. Akeke's thick Igbo accent apparently talking to someone on his phone. NNE, let me call you back. I don't see who I dey find. She was caught. She wouldn't be able to find the house keys fast enough to get into the house and pretend she hadn't noticed him. Besides, he had this look in his eyes like he meant business and had no problem disgracing her in front of all the neighbors. Good evening, Mr. Akeke. Zuri tried to sound confident despite the deep embarrassment she felt. Good evening, Abby. Madam, what is good about the evening when you've been away from paying your service charge? Tell me what is good about the evening. His voice grew louder, and by the time he'd finished speaking he was bellowing. Zuri felt her face flush, but she struggled to stay calm and push her guilt out of the way. Mr. Akeke, how am I running away? Madam, come here over 10 times this month looking for you, Mr. Akeke sneered. You have clearly been dodging me, but let me tell you something. If you don't pay me this week, I will cut off your power and water supply. Then how good will your evenings be? You are trying the wrong person. You think this place is free. Do you know how much it costs me to maintain this building? I can't afford for small girls like you to be owing me, and, to make matters worse, you've been avoiding my phone calls. Mr. Akeke, please lower your voice. Zuri saw her nosy neighbor, Mrs. B, looking out of her kitchen window and began to panic. If this situation escalated any further, she would be the sole topic of conversation in the compound for the next couple of weeks. Who knew where the gist would spread to? She felt like sinking into the ground. I should lower my voice, Abby. Look at this stupid girl. Oh, instead of you to tell me how you are going to pay me my money, you are saying I should lower my voice. Please calm down, Oga. I will pay you, Zuri pleaded. I should calm down. You are very stupid. I don't blame you. I blame the aristo that paid your rent. Zuri recoiled in shock. Which aristo? I have a job. How dare you? I don't sleep with men for money. I'm just having some financial challenges, but I will pay you. You don't have to insult me. All you small girls that will be sleeping with big men for money, then come to Lekki Phase 1 to pay rent you cannot sustain. Mr. Akeke shook his head in disgust. I'm sure you have quarreled with the barber you were sleeping with, that's why you can't come up with the money. Look, your rent will be due in less than 3 months. If you can't pay service charge, how can I expect my rent money? She stared at him in utter disbelief as he continued his rant. He had the gall to say that to her face. Mr. Akeke, it is enough, she shouted. For the first time that evening, he was silent. I did not kill anybody. I owe you, and I am telling you, I will pay. When my salary comes at the end of the month, I will pay half of what I owe and find another means of paying the rest in the next couple of weeks. I am very sorry to have put you in this position, but please don't ever speak to me in this manner again. That I owe you is not license for you to disrespect me. Mr. Akeke appeared too dumbfounded to say anything. Zuri took a deep breath as her hand closed on her keys at the bottom of her bag. Have a good evening, she said as she unlocked her door, entered her flat and closed the door in his face. What a mess. What a huge mess. Later that night, as she sank into her 500 thread count Egyptian cotton sheets to try and fall asleep, she knew she had just taken the first steps towards solving her money problems. She had confronted the biggest and most threatening debt, taken control of the situation, come up with a plan, and the sky had not fallen. Although she hadn't yet paid the debt, she fell asleep with a strong conviction in her mind that she would. Hello, Mummy. How are you? Zuri said into the phone as she attempted to sound cheerful. She didn't want her mother to worry about her. I'm wonderful. We thank God. How is Lagos? How is work? I hope you are going to church. Yes, Mummy, I am. Work is fine and Lagos is fine. How are things in Benin? As she listened to her mother about PHCN not providing electricity for over a week, her lower back pain and weekly doctor's visits, Zuri felt horrible about what she was about to ask her mum. It had been a week since she realized her bills had piled up and the pressure from her landlord, as well as not having a functioning car to go to work, was starting to get to her. She had attempted to tax her older brothers Osahan and Nehekere, who both lived abroad with their families, but they had both been posting her all week. Osahan lived in Russia, had a Russian wife, who seemed lovely, and 2 beautiful girls. Zuri had never met them in person because they had never visited Nigeria, so her relationship with them was mostly via Skype and email. When she'd called Osahan to ask for money, he told her things were tight and he had just sent money to Benin for Mummy, so he didn't have any spare cash, but he would see what he could do. That was a week ago. Nehekere lived in Texas. When she spoke to him last week, he complained bitterly about his crippling student loans from pursuing both the first degree and a master's, and how he'd had to rely on his credit card just to be able to make ends meet this month. So, no money from that end either. I hate what I'm about to do. Her mother was a widow, their father having died many years ago. Mama Osahan, as Zuri's mother was often called, survived on her husband's meager civil service pension and proceeds selling fabric in New Benin Market. Her income was supplemented by money her sons sent every couple of months. The woman wasn't hungry, but she certainly wasn't in a position to be funding a grown daughter's bad decisions. Are you listening? Zuri's mother asked. I said, Auntie UWA is coming to Lagos, week on her way to New York. Should I send you fruits? Or yam? No, Mummy, I'm good. Thank you. She was brought back to the present. She took a deep breath. Mummy, please can you loan me some money? How much? Her mum asked. About 500,000 naira. I'm really broke, Zuri replied. Mummy, you know I would ask if it wasn't important. She couldn't bring herself to ask for the full amount because, for starters, She knew her mother didn't have that kind of disposable income, and she also didn't want her to get too worried about her. Broke Key. How can you be broke? Aren't you working? Abby, did you lose your job? What do you need 500,000 for anyway? Zuri's explanation was met with a series of sighs on the other end of the line. My dear, I'm not in any position to help you right now. As I told you earlier, we've been spending so much money on diesel in this house because of the electricity situation, and my hospital bill is still pending. But let me see if I can borrow from Auntie UWA. No, Mummy, don't ask her. I will figure it out. How? You just said you have no money. It doesn't matter, Zuri said, trying to reassure her. I'm expecting some money in a few weeks. I just wanted something to tide me over in the meantime. A lie, of course. She had no idea how she was going to find the money. It took another hour to get her mother off the phone and reassure her that things weren't that bad. But they were, and the question that kept replaying in her mind was, how did things end up like this? Zuri was loath to admit to herself, but she couldn't escape the truth. She had been careless about her money. She always assumed that as long as she had a great job, she would never be hungry. At the back of her mind, the bank of the family bailout. Unfortunately, they were closed for business. She'd even thought about going to her friends, cap in hand, but she had enough pride not to go down that road. Even Tommy, who was closest to her, had heard her story but didn't offer to help, and Zuri recognized that it was probably because Tommy didn't have that kind of disposable income to lend. As Zuri stared at her bank balance for the 100th time, she finally understood being completely and utterly broke. Her version of broke didn't come from not having a job or being a low-income earner. It came from being bad with money. She had been working for 8 years and had no assets to show for her hard work. A measly amount of cash in the bank, no land, no stocks. Nothing of value to fall back on when things got bad, and things were disastrous. Smart money lesson. There's a lot of fear surrounding the way African women feel about money and the subsequent consequences of our relationship with money. When it comes to money in relation to our families, our businesses, our friendships, and society, many African women worry about not having enough to survive, not having enough to measure up to the lifestyle of our friends and family. The fear of failing in business, the fear of not being able to afford the lifestyle one has become accustomed to, then losing it all and becoming dependent on others. Ultimately, how we behave with money is deeply rooted in how we think about money, and fear can be a very crippling thing. It can stifle you and stop you from taking action to achieve your goals, but we must realize that fear is just an emotion. It is worrying about something that has the possibility to occur in the future. Unfortunately, this fear can be paralyzing. So sometimes, instead of confronting and facing those money fears, we hide from them and avoid them. However, confronting our fears is always the right step toward conquering them. What you deny or ignore, you delay. What you accept and face, you conquer. At the end of the day, we are all afraid of something, but the difference between successful people and average people is that they acknowledge their fears but don't let fear overcome them or stop them from achieving the goals. Exercise. Conquer money fears. 1. Make a list of all your money fears. 2. Think about why you have this money fear in the first place. It might be rooted in money habits that you already know are bad for your finances. For example, having expenses that are so high they consistently exceed your income each month, so you know it's not sustainable, and there's a voice in the back of your head that tells you you're living beyond your means, hence the fear of not being able to maintain your lifestyle. 3. Make a plan to counter each fear. The reason we usually allow fear to take over is because we don't have a plan and are uncertain of what will happen in the future. There is nothing that gives you confidence like having a detailed plan to conquer that uncertainty. Chapter 3. Where is your money going? It was a Saturday morning. the day Zuri had set aside to begin the process of tackling her financial situation. A track from MI's new album was blasting from her iPod speakers. Alekana C. Izo mi fi alabarika C. Everything we day face right now go turn story. We will all be rich, we will all be rich. From cooking with kerosene, to the back of limousine, going where we never been to seeing things we never seen. From buying food inside newspaper to the front page of magazines. When they see you tomorrow they won't recognize that they've seen you before. I'm wishing you money. I'm wishing you wealth. She danced around her apartment and sang along to the words. My ginger is on 10. It was odd, but the words from the song gave her hope. Hope that even though she didn't have a clear plan to pay off her debts and find financial stability, she would figure it out eventually because she was motivated. She had decided to deal with this financial situation the same way she would tackle a task at work, logically. As she sorted through the paper bag that acted as a filing cabinet for all her bank statements and service charge bills, she puzzled over where exactly all her money had gone. She earned about 600,000 naira a month, which frankly was a lot of money and way above the average Nigerian salary. So, where was it all going? What was she spending it on? As she rifled through the bag she noticed that most of her bank statements were unopened. It dawned on Zuri. She'd been supremely careless with her money for an incredibly long time. There had been months at a stretch she hadn't even checked her bank account. The statements she had looked at, she'd only paid cursory attention to. She sorted through the statements, arranged them according to dates and used her highlight pens to categorize her spending. Blue for meals, pink for accessories, green for her car, and so on and so forth. As she pored over her financial life, she came to an even more depressing realization. She had always been afraid of her bank statements and she hadn't wanted to admit to herself how precarious her life really was. Subconsciously, she'd always known she was spending mindlessly but never wanted to confront her spending habits because it made her uncomfortable. She told herself that she worked hard and earned good money so she deserved to splurge once in a while. But what was evident from this exercise was that she indulged all the time. Damn, she couldn't believe how much she spent alone on dinner and cocktails with the girls at RSVP and Spice every month. An exhausted Zuri sat back and stared at the now neat stacks of paper on her dining table. She'd spent hours analyzing the statements, trying to make sense of the numbers. It was painful but eye-opening. In fact, she had a new philosophy. If you want to truly know a person, look at their bank statements. Apparently, the picture her bank statements painted was that she was an obese alcoholic with an unhealthy bag addiction, who owned enough aso ebi to open her own mall. Who is Ria and why did I pay so much for her aso ebi for goodness sake? But that wasn't who she was it? Why then, did the money she had spent not reflect her values? She had decided the best way to make sense of everything was to put all the data she had collected under her 6 biggest spending categories: rent, utilities, food, transportation, wardrobe, and other, and began to make sense of them in relation to her annual income of about 7.2 million. The 2.5 million she paid annually for her 2-bedroom apartment was easily her biggest expenditure. She had read an article once that described Lagos as one of the most expensive cities in the world and she couldn't agree more. The unspoken success and wealth connotations of living on the island had made Phase 1 one of the more desirable parts of town. Even though she loved living there she couldn't help but think she was living in an upmarket ghetto. The bad roads, inefficient power supply, and the sometimes filthy water was not exactly high-class living. Luckily, she was only paying a year's rent up front. Most Nigerians had to pay too. The utilities were fairly easy to track because she'd been receiving monthly service charge notices from Mr. Akeke's facilities manager that detailed the cost of diesel, PHCN, water, security, refuse collection and other maintenance services. These all added up to her quarterly service charge bill. If she added the cost of cable from DSTV, her internet subscription, and the amount of money she spent on buying credit for her mobile phone, she was spending roughly $500,000 a quarter, which came to about $2 million a year. When it came to transportation, it cost about $8,000 a week, or about $32,000 a month to fill the tank of her car, which usually lasted about a week. That translated to $416,000 a year. If she included the occasional Uber ride, which were lifesavers when there was fuel scarcity or her car was at the mechanics, she would be spending approximately $784,000 on transportation this year, excluding car repairs. In her head, she took apart the true expense of her guilty pleasure, her wardrobe. Shoes. At an average of $180,000 a pop, I've bought at least 10 pairs of designer shoes in the last 12 months, which adds up to just over $1 million. On shoes. Aso Ebi. Attending weddings for people I don't even know cost me about $60,000 a month, $720,000 a year. Harbor. And that's without designer. With Taylor, another $480,000 for the year. For outfits I would never re-rock. The more Zuri looked at it, the more ludicrous it seemed to her, the pomp and circumstance of being a wedding guest. If you attended a wedding, you had to wear the Aso Ebi as a symbol of your support of the bride and groom. In some cases, you may not even be allowed to enter the venue for the wedding reception if you were not wearing said Aso Ebi. As she caught a glimpse of one of her Virgo's lounge dresses peeking out of her closet, she did a quick calculation on everything in the last batch of wardrobe expenses, Nigerian designers. She had spent a pretty penny shopping at Zazai, the new department store on Balarabe Musa. She had spent $1.8 million on outfits in less than 12 months. It wasn't that the pieces she bought were particularly expensive. It was the frequency of her purchases. You could say many things about the city of Lagos, but it was never boring. There were events every weekend. If it wasn't a wedding, there was some kind of fashion event or new restaurant opening, and every event required a new outfit to kill on the red carpet and make it onto the blogs like on Belanija or Linda Ikeji. The comment sections of Niger blogs were always brutal. Zuri stared at the Excel sheet on her MacBook Pro that now had detailed information on how she had spent her income in the past 12 months. She was an odd mix of fear, annoyance, depression, and excitement. She had no savings, no assets, and that worried her. She would have to get serious about her finances and be disciplined if she wanted to get herself out of this situation and not repeat her mistakes. It frightened her if she was being completely honest, but it made one thing clear. She was going to have to go on a money diet, and first up was to clear her debt to Mr. Akeke. Even though a plan to tackle the imminent threat of her debt had begun to form in her head, Zuri still felt at sea. She knew she would have to make some changes to her spending if she was going to be on track in the long run. She had to forgive herself for her money mistakes. They were in her past, and what mattered was that she was doing something about it now. As she considered how brutal her spending diet was going to be in the next few months, her thoughts were interrupted by a loud banging on the door. PHCN had decided they weren't going to provide electricity today, and so the doorbell wasn't working. She wondered who it was. She wasn't expecting any guests, but the banging was a little too familiar. "A beg hold o, Abi Na get house," Zuri shouted. As she looked through the peephole, she realized it was her security guard. "Suleiman, what is it now? Why are you banging my door like that?" "Sorry ma, I been think say you no fit here as light no day," he said in a placating tone. "Person come drop something for you," he said as he handed her a rather large but fancy gold gift box. "Thank you. This looks suspiciously like Aso Ebi. The packaging for these things are becoming fancier with each passing wedding." For the life of her, Zuri couldn't think of whose wedding it could be. She didn't remember paying for any recently. As she read the card that came with the box, she felt even more confused. Hashtag. Hashtag a better key. You are invited to Rabina and Teo's wedding, the card read. As the realization hit, she started dialing a number on her phone. Hi darling, what's popping? Tami, why is Abina sending me Aso Ebi? Are we friends? I mean, I've only met the girl a handful of times. Wait, how did she even get my address? Calm down, what's the big deal? She said she wanted to invite you to the wedding and asked me for your address. Tami laughed. I thought it was nice of her. Nice. I don't have money to be paying for Aso Ebi right now. Abby, is it free? If it's free, that's fine. Besides, when did people start sending Aso Ebi before payment? Zuri, you are overreacting. It's just 30,000. I've told you what my financial situation is like right now, so there's no, just, with 1 kobo of my money right now. I spent the last couple of hours going through my bank statements and it turns out just 30,000. Translates to a lot of money over a period of time. I've decided I'm only buying Aso Ebi for close friends' weddings. Otherwise it's such a waste. Tami was roaring with laughter. I'd like to see how you would pull that off, with weddings every other weekend in this Lagos. I'm not even sure what you are complaining about. I'm one of her bridesmaids, and if you see the list of demands, you'll cry. There's the cost of the bridesmaids' dresses. She'd like us to wear matching Sophia Webster shoes. There's the money we have to contribute to her hen night and bridal shower. I beg, the list is long. Before it's over I will have spent at least 300,000 and you are complaining about 30,000. That is just ridiculous. When you are not the one getting married. Darling, it's what you do for friends. Remember that one day you will get engaged and expect other people to pay for your own. Trust me, with what I'm going through now, I doubt I'll be subjecting other people to any unrealistic demands when it's my turn. As she got off the phone, Zuri began to make a list of all the things she had to quit spending on if she had any real chance of paying Mr. Akeke. Goodbye Proflex gym membership, she thought. Even though she loved the way Jide's longevity classes made her feel, she knew she had to make some sacrifices in the medium term. She could rejoin later, but for now, running on the Lekki Ikoyi bridge would have to do. At least that one was free. Other was a huge category for her. It mostly included money she had withdrawn from the ATM and she couldn't account for properly because she had a hazy recollection of how the cash was spent. Tips, petrol, a quick stop at the grocery store when their point of sales machines weren't working. Still, Zuri decided she would limit herself to 20,000 cash a week and make it a point to make a note on her iPhone each time she spent cash. She would also put herself on a budget for her phone. She was definitely spending a lot on credit and data, having meaningless telephone and FaceTime conversations with her friends. It went without saying that she was on a clothes purchasing ban for at least 6 months. From now on, she would either wear the clothes and shoes she had in her wardrobe, or she would sit her behind at home. Eating out also had to be cut down to only special occasions for the next 6 months or till she figured herself out. Zuri decided that avoiding her bank statements and not checking the balance of her accounts were no longer options. She would set money dates with herself on Sundays, to see how much she had spent each week and stay on track with the goals she had set for herself with regards to how she would cut her spending. Cut spending by 50%. She spun in her chair and grinned in relief. Zuri was excited about her social life for the first time in weeks. She was having the girls over for dinner instead of going to eat at a restaurant, in a bid to balance her new frugal lifestyle with some much-needed fun. She had told them to each bring something. A bottle of wine, a dessert, something, to contribute to the dinner party. They were a rowdy bunch, so she knew the night would be full of laughter and fun. God knew she needed a night like this so badly. She had been on a spending diet for about 6 weeks since her big aha moment. She had intended to cut her spending by 50% but had found it unsustainable. She could only manage to set aside about 35% from next month's salary, so she had 210,000 naira sitting in her savings account. It wasn't nearly enough to cover her debt, but it was a good start. She couldn't even front and pretend to be completely happy, because it had meant cutting out a lot from her life. The spending diet actually felt more like a juice cleanse, but either way, she was starving. She was trying to make it a habit to keep track of everything she spent in a notebook which she reviewed at the end of every week. If she was honest, it was exhausting. Penny pinching was not her thing. It was hard and she wasn't sure this frugalista life was for her long term. The struggle is real. She missed her weekly trips to Zazai to splurge on her favorite Nigerian designers. She'd spotted a new clan dress on Instagram that she knew she would have bought instantly if she hadn't put herself on a clothes ban. And she definitely was experiencing severe bouts of FOMO, the fear of missing out, when she saw pictures of her friends at RSVP having cocktails. If she was being completely honest, she felt deprived and it was exhausting. It had been a tough sell getting the girls to come to her house for dinner on a Friday night instead of heading to the hot new bar that had just opened. Tommy, Lara, Adesua, and Laden had relented after I bombarded them with text messages. They were always so much fun. It was almost 7 p.m. and her guests had started arriving. I've always loved this flat. It's so chic, Tommy said as she sauntered in. I know, right? I'm always telling people how Zuri got such a great deal on this flat, Lara said. It has so much space and it's finished really well. I can't believe you only pay 2.5 million, especially on this particular street. I've always loved the left side of Lekki Phase 1. It's still fairly residential compared to the rest of the estate, which is becoming too commercial. Tell me about it, said Laden as she rolled her eyes. I don't know how you guys can live here. There's just too much going on at once. Domino's, Ebeano, the filling stations, the traffic. That's why I love living in Ikoyi. None of this mess. Tommy and Zuri shared a telling look. Laden was an area snob. She thought certain areas in Lagos were beneath her because they were too pedestrian. She was one of those girls that made annoying statements like I don't do the mainland, or I only cross Third Mainland Bridge when I have to get to the airport. This was ironic to the people who knew her before she married Bode, who was from an old money Lagos family and grew up in Ikoyi and became brand new. Laden actually grew up in Ijesha, which was, in fact, on the mainland. I don't know. Oh, Adesua chimed in. It's a really nice flat for sure, but don't you think living here is a bad idea for Zuri? I mean, she's single and this is the sort of show of wealth that drives guys away. Zuri stared at her blankly. She was used to this annoying line of conversation from Adesua, because she was one of those women who believed a woman must downplay her achievements to seem more attractive. She had shared with the girls on several occasions how she lied to her husband about how much she earned before they got married. Zuri still could not figure out why a woman had to make herself seem that much smaller to accommodate a man's ego. Adesua was an associate at a top law firm in Lagos and she was married to Soji, who did business, although it was an open secret that they depended on Adesua's salary to survive. Still, Adesua kept up the charade that Soji was the breadwinner, preserving his pride. Should I live under the bridge because I'm single? Said Zuri. My mother doesn't live in Lagos, and frankly, I like my space. The thought of sacrificing my comfort and living with a distant relative until someone decides to marry me is depressing. I tire. Oh, Laura chimed in. I've never understood that logic. Please, I believe you attract what you want in this life. If a guy is intimidated by the fact that she lives in a 2-bedroom flat, then he should keep it moving. That's not the type we are looking for, Abeg. She hissed. Abby, oh. Zuri, please don't listen to Adesua, before you come and attract the type that is hungry and looking at you to feed him. Laughed. This reminds me of a client I had a fitting with today in the studio, Tommy said. She's a banker, she's single, and she was lamenting about how she really wanted to buy a SUV but her mum won't let her. Not because she can't afford it but because her mum believes it will make her seem too independent and drive potential suitors away. Could you believe that? I couldn't stop laughing. The girl was so upset. That's the society we live in, Adesua replied. The women all nodded. Men generally feel threatened if you seem just as successful as them. Successful than them. It's just wisdom when you downplay it. That's not true. Oh, Adesua. Zuri laughed. I know lots of Nigerian men who are married to women who are equally as successful as them and they seem very happy. These days no man wants a woman that's a liability. I think it's all about finding a balance. Lara said. I love earning my own money but I need a man that can look after me. Forget all that 50-50 nonsense. My money is my money. His money is our money. They all burst into laughter and high-fived each other. Plus, I have a Chanel addiction that I fully intend my future husband to fund, she added. And it would be nice for someone to share some of the financial burden I carry sending my siblings to school. Even though I earn good money, the financial responsibility of looking after my family takes its toll sometimes. And the truth is, I always feel like no matter how much I make, I'm spending it on others faster than I can spend it on myself. Lara was an oil and gas big babe, status granted by the fact that she was an oil trader with great pay and a job that took her on regular trips all over the world. She had cafe au lait skin, a tiny waist and generous curves, which went a long way to attract the array of rich men, both single and married, who were constantly sending her gifts. She was always very secretive about her love life, so none of the other girls were ever sure if she was actually dating any of these men, or if they were just rumors based on the guys she'd been seen with around town occasionally. Her father had died when she was very young and, as the eldest child, she had always felt responsible for looking after her mother and 3 siblings. Even though she earned a lot of money for her age, a good proportion went to paying university fees, plus rent and living expenses for her mum. They were all in awe of her sense of responsibility because even though she complained from time to time, they knew she couldn't see herself doing otherwise. Zuri was enjoying herself, and she was glad to see that her friends didn't seem to be missing being out at a trendy restaurant. But just as she started to crack open the second bottle of wine, she decided it might be a good idea to share some of her money concerns with the girls. Guys, do you ever think about where all your money goes? Zuri said, suddenly. Lara laughed. How? What do you mean? I mean, where does it all go? I work hard, I make decent money but it never seems like it's enough because the bills keep coming. As in, it never stops. I've been struggling financially the last few weeks and I can't help wondering where does all my money go? In fact, since that incident with my landlord, I've been paying a lot of attention to what I spend my money on and it dawned on me the other day that a lot of the money goes to things that are not necessarily at the top of my priority list. Girl, I can relate. Lara said. Even with my salary, I feel silly complaining that it's never enough because I have so many expenses every month. Between hospital bills for my mum and school fees for my siblings, my financial obligations are a nightmare. I can't even afford to go on holiday or buy a new car, but they're my responsibility, so what can I do? I've never really thought about it, Ladin said. I don't work but Bode gives me a healthy allowance, but I can't really tell you where it goes specifically. Shopping. The rest of the girls laughed in unison. Ladin smiled then hissed jokingly. Don't be funny. Do I shop more than the rest of you? Yes, you do, Tommy replied. Every conversation with you is about how you absolutely have to get the Dior, Chanel or Louis Vuitton bag you saw so-and-so girl rocking on Instagram. N. I like designer bags. So shoot me, Ladin said cheekily. Bode is not complaining. Yes, but we are just pointing out that that's where your money goes, Laura said, still very amused by her friend's antics. Tommy, you, Inco, where does your money go? Men. I'll have to say weddings, Tommy said. I don't know if my name is on the internet with a sign that says professional bridesmaid. Almost everyone I know that gets engaged wants me to be on their train. I don't tire. Plus, it's getting expensive. But I can't lie, Shah, I'm also addicted to good hair. Kicker and Chioma sell the nicest hair. They all laughed and nodded in agreement except Adesua, who had gone quiet. Adesua, are you all right? Zuri said. You haven't said much. Where does your own money go? Tell us, N.A. Soji. Adesua said solemnly. What do you mean? Ladin said, slightly confused. I mean, the bulk of my money goes to Soji. Soji and his family members. Adesua said right before she burst into tears. For a startled moment, no one said anything. They all exchanged worried looks and then Tommy rushed to her side to console her. What's wrong, love? Talk to us. Maybe we can help. Men. I'm just frustrated. Adesua sobbed. Everything is just a bit much right now. What do you mean? Zuri asked. Adesua took several ragged breaths. Then everything came out in a rush. I mean, it's not one particular thing. I just feel overwhelmed sometimes. I work so hard to earn money so my family is all right, but it always seems like it's never enough. It's always one thing after the other. If the generator doesn't break down this week, there will be something that needs fixing in one of the cars or a hospital bill for Junior. It just feels never-ending sometimes, like I'm working only to work for even more money to spend on things that don't make me any happier, but just stress the hell out of me. Then there's the anxiety that comes with knowing that we have barely any savings and zero assets to speak of. If I lose my job tomorrow, my family is in serious trouble. Have you talked to Soji about this? Ladin asked. I can't. Adesua exclaimed. Lara, Zuri, Tommy, and Ladin all exchanged knowing glances. What do you mean you can't? Ladin said. He is your husband and he's supposed to support you. You should be able to share this sort of frustration with him, or, better still, this should be his frustration, not yours. Adesua sighed. Listen, the last few months have been really tough on Soji. His new business venture hasn't exactly taken off yet. If I share my frustrations with him, he might see it as me complaining and I don't want that. Don't mind me, you guys, I was just having a moment. It's probably all the wine I drank that's making me emotional. It's just frustrating sometimes because I'm constantly thinking, what exactly am I working for? Where does all the money go? We've been trying to take a vacation for the last 3 years, but by the time we spend the money on all these expenses, there's nothing left over to go to Relays, not to talk of London. Tommy tried to ease the tension. Girl, I'm sure at one point or the other we all wish that someone would tell us everything would be all right, give us a hug, then hand us $1 million. Preach. Zuri giggled as she raised one hand in the air. She poured another glass of wine and set it in front of Adesua. Ladin patted Adesua on the shoulder and glanced at the other girls, silently seeking support for what she was going to say next. Adesua, I think you baby Soji too much. I don't mean to be rude, but he's getting too complacent. It's one thing if you are working to contribute 50-50 to the household, but when you are carrying the burden alone, that's not fair. You are the woman, not the man. Oh. This is why I don't work. Before Bode gets any ideas. It's the man's responsibility to provide for the family, and once you upset the dynamic, they start to resent you for it. I've seen it happen many times. Zuri and Tommy shifted in their seats uncomfortably. Adesua sobbed. You don't understand. He is under a lot of stress. He took a loan from the bank for the startup he was trying to run before he had this new idea, and it's already a struggle paying that loan back. He started building a house for his mum, so the pressure there is also adding to his stress. He doesn't want to let her down, so I'm chipping in a good chunk of my salary, but it's stressful because before I cough my salary is finished. Lara broke her silence. Laden has a point. Oh, Adesua. What if you stopped working? Then what would Soji do? The things that some men do, Shah, I don't understand. You have a good woman that's willing to hold you down, who's supportive and wants to see you succeed. Shouldn't that be an incentive to work harder and stop playing at business? Business is not for everyone, I beg. If he's tried these many businesses and they didn't work out, then he can just go and get a job. It is irresponsible. He has children, for God's sake. Abby, said Laden. Plus, Adesua, why should it be your responsibility to help him build his mother's house? You are taking things too far. This man obviously thinks you are a muumuu. Shouldn't his wife and child be his number one priority? Adesua sighed. Not every married person is into wealth like you, Laden. Soji is his mother's only son, so he sees it as his responsibility to look after her, and I actually admire that about him. Do I resent the fact that the financial burden of his responsibility rests on me? Yes, but he is my husband and I love him. It's my duty to support him. Let me just tell you, Adesua, you are being foolish. Love Ko, love Ni. Laden scoffed. You are his wife, not his mother or father. You have your roles mixed up. If he starts giving the money you earn to all these small girls in Lagos, then you will know. Just don't come here and complain, Shah. Zuri could tell that her friends were growing uncomfortable with where the conversation was headed. What had happened to her fun, carefree dinner party? Why did the talk always seem to circle back to marriage and money? She glanced at Adesua. They had all heard rumors of Soji's infidelity but never discussed it with her, because it was just what a large number of men did in Lagos. In fact, it was almost as though Nigerian women didn't expect fidelity, but they also didn't expect it to be thrown in their faces. Soji's overt infidelity irked because he was also a lousy provider for Adesua and Soji Jr. It was as though he spent his time looking for new ways to humiliate her and waste her hard-earned money. There were several occasions when one or all of them had bumped into him at a sip, popping champagne bottles for a bevy of women. He was lazy and disloyal, and everyone but his wife could see it. Why don't we talk about something else? Zuri said. She held the wine bottle up. Who needs more wine? 4 glasses shot up. She laughed. Okay, she said, getting up to make the rounds. And now someone tell me about some fabulous piece of clothing that they've recently bought. At least that way I can live vicariously through you. There was laughter around the table, and Laden and Lara both started talking at once, while Tommy leaned into the conversation. Adesua gave Zuri a grateful look when she topped her glass off. Zuri just smiled and patted her shoulder. Hours after the girls had left, Zuri washed the dishes and contemplated the different directions the conversation had veered to during the course of the night. They all seemed to be about different things. Men, difficult marriages, apartments, and the burden of bills, having a family, the responsibility of having children or having elderly parents. The truth was, one thing was at the core of those conversations: money. She was confounded by how a close group of friends could have such different ideals when it came to handling money. Even though Adesua had spent most of her 20s downplaying her earnings so she didn't seem too independent to potential suitors, she had managed to attract a husband who had no qualms taking advantage of her income and bending it to his will. So even though she earned a decent income, she wasn't financially independent because how she spent her money was dictated by her husband's whims and desires, not hers. Tami had fewer responsibilities than the others because her parents were wealthy. She lived at home and her business was more of a fun project rather than something that provided an income to survive on. Her lifestyle was dependent on her daddy and boyfriend du jour. When Zuri thought about it, she realized that her money conversations with Tami were never really about saving, investing, or business. They were usually geared toward the next spontaneous holiday or what designer shoes to buy. It definitely seemed like Tami was still in La La Land when it came to her finances. Laden was a housewife who firmly believed that bank statements were not her business. Bode could worry about that. Her job was to show him how to spend it. To her, she fell in line with the common attitude that it was the sole responsibility of a husband or father to worry about family finances. Zuri wondered whether in an uncertain society whether it was prudent for Laden not to take an active interest in how her bank account got filled every month. Still, Zuri could recall many women had been unable to maintain the lifestyle to which they had become accustomed to because their husband had lost his job, left them for another woman, or worse, had died suddenly with no will and his extended family had kicked him out and taken over the assets because in many African traditions, women weren't allowed to inherit wealth. Bode's parents seemed very refined, but Zuri still wondered if Laden was right. And then there was Lara, who earned more than all of the girls for sure. Her bonuses as an oil trader made even Laden's jaw drop. However, no matter how much money came in, it seemed like there was always one more hurdle to leap that was not necessarily of her own making. Over the years, Zuri had watched her consistently upgrade her family's accommodations, from an apartment in Ayana Apaja to one in Bagadar and then the house in Lekki Phase 1. They were all properties Lara paid rent on, and, coupled with the university fees she paid for her siblings abroad, Zuri wondered if Lara had any left over for savings or investments. As it was, she wasn't sure even her friend's salary could withstand the financial burden of her family's expenses. Zuri considered her friends, women who lived very comfortable lives but didn't seem to have a handle on their finances. Their money seemed like it was being pulled in different directions, most of which were not the direction they intended. What do we want our money to do? Zuri mused. She had never really articulated what exactly she wanted the money she earned to do for her. Although she had taken some decent steps towards figuring out where her money was going, she realized now after weeks of her spending diet that she needed a more concrete plan for any of the changes she had made to be sustainable. Smart money lesson. Track your expenses. Most people don't know where the money they earn goes. What percentage of your income goes to food, transportation, clothes? Just like in any successful business where you track the revenue and costs periodically, it is also important to track the expenses in our personal lives. Nigerian women have to become the CFOs of their financial lives and learn to take control of the income they earn now, instead of waiting for their incomes to increase in the future before they learn to manage money. Some women have no idea how much their lifestyle costs. She may not spend recklessly, but she subconsciously develops a habit of spending, good or bad. If you don't treat the money you earn with respect, it will leave you with no respect. We have to learn to spend with intention by allocating our resources to reflect the lifestyle we want and are able to sustainably afford. This all starts with having a clear idea of where the money is going in the first place. You have to give up the excuses and learn to control money instead of letting money control you. Exercise. Track your spending. 1. Write down everything you spent your income on in the last month. This will give you good ideas of how you are spending money and help you identify areas to cut or increase. 2. Review your bank statements from the last 12 months. 3. Separate your findings into wants and needs. Limit your wants and prioritize your needs. 4. Identify 3 to 5 things to cut each month that would make a significant impact. Review what you are spending on things like your phone calls and food, because these are examples of things that are important but we tend to spend on mindlessly. Assess your spending in these areas and set spending limits. 5. Spend on the things you love and cut expenses ruthlessly in the things that don't matter to you. Chapter 4. Dealing with debt. This sun is out in full force. Lara thought as she squinted. This was bad, particularly on a weekend when you had to attend an outdoor function in Lagos. She got out of her BMW and started walking toward the venue. She was slightly annoyed because it had taken her 20 minutes to find parking, and the security man at the house she parked next to had demanded 500 naira. It wasn't that the money was a lot. She certainly could have tipped him at least that much. It was the sense of entitlement that bugged her. "Madam, you can't park here unless you pay 500, he'd said with authority. She'd just rolled her eyes, wound down the window, and paid up because she hadn't had the patience to argue. This man had turned the small patch of land in front of his Ogre's house into a business, taking advantage of the fact that there was a party happening up the road. The laws of demand and supply, I guess, she laughed to herself. This was Lagos. Everybody had to hustle to make an extra buck. As she walked toward the party, tiny beads of sweat started to form at her temples. Her makeup had already begun to feel like it was melting off her face, and it would probably get worse because Bank was having her son's first birthday celebration in the garden of the beautiful Ikoyi home. As Lara approached the gate and winced at the damage that the bad road was doing to the heel of her Louboutins, she realized how much she dreaded these children's parties. It was weird because she loved kids and hoped to have some of her own one day, but that was precisely it. She was approaching her mid-30s, and parties like this just reminded her of everything she didn't have yet, a husband and children, and that her proverbial biological clock was ticking. 2 days ago she had absolutely no intention of making an appearance. She had planned to cite an unavoidable work emergency, call Bank after the party to apologize profusely, and send a gift for her son. However, Zuri had called her last night to guilt-trip her into coming. "You can't be serious, Lara. We've known Bank since university and you know how long she's been trying for a boy. It's good to celebrate with people when they're celebrating and mourn with them when they're mourning." Zuri's tone had reminded Lara of her own mother's. "Remember that one day, you'll get married and have a baby too, and won't you expect all your friends to be there to celebrate with you?" An exasperated Lara finally agreed. "Okay. Oh, I have heard. I'll be there tomorrow." Zuri wasn't wrong. It was good to celebrate with people when they were celebrating. Lara believed that at her core. Plus there was a part of her that felt slightly sorry for the pressure Bank had been under in the last few years to have a boy. However, her sympathy remained slight because as far as she was concerned, the pressure was mostly self-induced. Of course, Bank's obsession with producing a male child was fed by Nigerian society's obsession with boys, coupled with a fair amount of pressure from her in-laws. But the fact was the woman had already had 3 beautiful girls who were happy and healthy before her son had arrived. Some people hadn't even gotten married nor had the opportunity to have a child, so it was a bit selfish for Bank to expect her sympathy. Bank was also one of those annoying women that started almost every sentence with, "My husband said," or "you won't understand because you don't have kids." The more Lara thought about previous conversations she had engaged in with Bank, the more irritable her mood became. She passed through security, checked her name off the guest list, and navigated her way through to Bank's garden. Their backyard had been transformed into some sort of kiddies' wonderland. She recognized some characters from a cartoon she was sure she grew up watching but couldn't quite place the name. There was a little boy and lots of animals, and the place looked like an actual forest. As she walked by a wooden sign that said "Wild Jungle Party Starts Here, Rumble in the Jungle," it hit her. It was the Jungle Book. How clever, Laura thought. As she approached the kids' eating area, which was surrounded by a mix of large palm trees and coconut trees, she couldn't help but marvel at how realistic the jungle looked. They must have spent a fortune on decor. Hi Bank, where's the birthday boy? Laura air kissed her friend on both cheeks and gave her a faux hug. He's having the time of his life in the playpen with the other kids his age. It's such a pity he's not old enough to play in the tree house with the older kids. You know, it took the carpenters 2 whole days to erect that thing. Bank replied, with a smug, self-satisfied look. As she walked toward the adult section to find Zuri, Laura looked up at the beautifully constructed treehouse, which had actual vines and leaves hanging from them. There was also a spectacular waterfall, flanked by rocks on each side and complete with fun plastic flamingos bobbling in the water. Laura took it all in, amused. She wasn't sure why she even bothered being surprised anymore. This was Lagos, where almost everything was a large-scale production including a 1-year-old's birthday party. The extravaganzas were never about the child though. They were really about the parents and the celebration of life. A party like this would surely have set him back a few million naira. She spotted Zuri and tried to wave to catch her attention, but she was deep in conversation with another woman. As she got closer to their table, she realized the girl was Chineza, who Laura despised. It wasn't because she had done anything to her directly. She just hated everything the girl stood for. She was a fairly young fashionista who had found a way to ingratiate herself into every social stratum in Lagos, regardless of age. There were 40-year-old guys she was besties with. Even Laura had to admit that. She had the whole innocent, I'm such a sweet girl act down pat. The thing was, Laura had heard some rather unsavory things come out of the girl's mouth about others. It was a wonder that more people didn't see through her. She had once mentioned to Laura at another party that a famous actress she was working with was broke, couldn't afford her services, was always begging for freebies, was sleeping around Lagos for money, and how she couldn't stand her because she lacked morals. The following week on Instagram, Laura spotted an emotional post the actress put up of Chineza, saying how she was such an amazing person who was so selfless and loyal. It made Laura sick to her stomach. She wondered what the rat was telling Zuri now. Yari. Laura, you made it, Zuri said as she stood up to hug her. What's wrong with you, Seth? I told you I was coming. N.A., Laura laughed. Hey sis, said Chineza, sounding rather excited. Hey, Laura responded with a forced smile. She looked at Zuri. Can you come with me to find the bathroom? The heat is destroying my makeup. I need to go and touch up, so I'm not out here looking crazy. Ha ha, you look fine, Joe. Zuri replied. I'll show you where it is. Chineza will be back soon, okay? They both stood in the guest bathroom in front of the mirror, examining their faces. Laura reached for her House of Tara compact and dabbed her T-zone to remove any traces of oil, while Zuri retouched her House of Tara Aris lipstick. What was the Chineza girl saying to you? Laura asked. You know she is quite the gossip. Be careful what you say to her. She's one of those people you don't have to even tell actual gist to. They can twist even the most mundane piece of information and then carry your matter like a town crier. Zuri laughed. It's funny. She was actually saying the vilest things about Bank. I can't lie. I wanted to hear the gist, but at the same time it made me uncomfortable because we are still in the woman's house, for God's sake. Vile. How so? A beg. Spill. What did she say? Laura laughed. Even me. I want to hear. Basically, she was saying that Bank and Femi can never afford the lavish parties they've become known for. They're loaded, now. Femi has been running a lucrative oil and gas business for years. What is that small rat on about? Laura scoffed. Ha. The girl said it took bank a year to finish paying off all the vendors from her third child's birthday party 2 years ago. Zuri begged, "Stop that joke. Which Lagos vendors will let someone owe them for 1 year and not disgrace them?" Lara said as she rolled her eyes. "Girl, that's what I said too. Oh, but Chinesa claims that bank had paid substantial deposits before the party and just stopped picking up their calls after the party was done. Apparently it didn't become a big scandal because of their family name and the vendors didn't want to spoil the prospect of future business with bank, seeing as she's known for throwing lavish parties. That's so bizarre. I wonder if there's any truth to it." That wasn't all. Oh. She said bank owed several Nigerian designers around Lagos for clothes they had made for her and she had yet to pay for. She said combined the debt she had racked up was in the millions. Zuri clapped her hands dramatically. "Anyway, please don't repeat this. I'm tired of this Lagos. Only God knows if any of it is true and I'm pretty sure we are not the only ones that have heard this gist. Let's go back out to the party." Lara nodded. All this at a 1-year-old's birthday party. It was mind-boggling. As she and Lara approached their table, Zuri noticed that a few guys had joined Chinesa and they were deep in discussion. "See you. It's all bank-funded, their entire lifestyle," said Tunji, one of Femi's friends. "Is it just that? Does he pay his staff?" "He doesn't. Meanwhile they'll be throwing a party that cost millions," said a guy Zuri couldn't quite place. Chinesa was smiling coquettishly. "Egbin, are you sure? Bank just asked me to style her for December because she has so many events to attend. Do you think I should take the job? Because I'm really busy in December. You know, since that Bella Niger article, the whole world wants me to style them and I'm overwhelmed. I would hate to give up other jobs for her and not get paid. Advise me. What do you think I should do?" Zuri observed Chinesa in appalled awe. Lara was right. This girl had the whole "I'm so innocent" routine down pat. The looks she threw at Tunji and his friend like a damsel in distress were at odds with the fact that she had just said some pretty nasty things about bank. It was obvious that Chinesa had led everyone down the path of discussing the couple's supposed money woes. On her drive home later that evening, Zuri reflected on everything she had heard that day. The combination of stories about bank and Femi and their Besse made her feel, well, some type of way. That Chinesa girl was mean-spirited. She was surprised she hadn't really noticed that about her before, but she couldn't imagine what she had to gain from spreading these stories and inciting even more malicious ones. It didn't even matter if they were true or not. Bank had invited her to her son's birthday because she thought she was so sweet. It's funny, Zuri thought, how you never know what people really think of you or what they were capable of saying about you even under your own roof. Bank would have a fit if she ever heard. As her cab drove through the gates of her apartment building, Zuri contemplated her own money situation. She looked up at the balconies of her neighbors and wondered if there were rumors already circulating about her inability to pay the service charge. Mr. Akeke would have undoubtedly complained about her to at least one or two other residents, and the Lagos Gist Mill would have new fodder to grind. Zuri began checking her email as she walked up the stairs to her flat. There was a very polite email from Neka, the retail manager at Zazai, reminding her that she had an 80,000 naira balance to pay at the end of the month and an extra late fee of 15% would be added to the agreed 2% credit fee if payment was not made by the 30th of the month. Zuri sat on her bed and reread the email and examined the invoice Neka had sent. Zazai had a credit policy for their loyal high-end customers, which she enjoyed. It was usually for clients who worked at banks, whose debt could be deducted directly from their salaries at the end of the month, but they charged an additional 2% premium and customers were expected to pay within 30 days. At this point it occurred to Zuri that she had not fully accounted for her total debt. She had only been stressed about the immediate threats. She had obsessively thought about little else other than Mr. Akeke and how she could possibly pay him in good time. She had completely forgotten about the trickle debt that was adding up to another river. 60,000 for 2 aso ebi she had collected on credit. 70,000 for some Indian hair that a friend had brought from the US. This was becoming a mess, even though she had made several changes to her spending in the last few weeks. She needed to confront her debt in its entirety and formulate a strategy to beat it down. A plan began to form in her mind. It was drastic but simple and, more importantly, it would be effective. She made a list of all her debts, an amount and the name of the person or business she owed. The total came to 1.12 million. It was not a small amount, but consolidating it made it less scary. Then she prioritized the debts according to their urgency. Mr. Akeke was at the top of the list. She needed a place to live. She set a schedule for how long it would take to pay off each debt, placing a realistic timeline for when she could afford to pay off each loan. She didn't want to make the timelines too comfortable, but she knew they had to be paid off as quickly as possible so she could be debt-free. Next, raising money to clear her debts. She had already been able to save 210,000 from the previous month, but that still left a substantial amount of the debt to clear. She earned 600,000 naira, so she decided she could squeeze out another 220,000 from her salary this month to pay Mr. Akeke in full. Paying in installments would only drag the misery out longer, since the next bill for service charge was already looming. Tommy had told her about a shopping consignment outfit called Luxury Concierge, which could help her offload her designer bags fairly quickly if they were in decent condition. She called them and set up a meeting, so their staff could inspect and value the bags to set a realistic selling price. One of the co-founders, Mariah, had spoken with her on the phone, had told her that if everything went well they could sell the bags for as much as 400,000 each in about 10 days, because Chanel and Alexander McQueen were in high demand. She would sell the car. It was costing her too much money just to maintain it. It would have been easier to buy and manage a brand new Toyota, but at the time, the sweet bonus she got when she started her job at Richmond made it almost impossible to turn down the terrific offer she was getting from a friend of a friend who had to sell the car because he was moving abroad. A 30-minute conversation later, Zuri had persuaded her mechanic to put her car on the market and to recoup the 200,000 she owed him from the profits of the sale. He would get a 5% commission for assisting her with selling the car. She had also convinced Tommy to pick her up for work for a while. Tommy had grumbled, but Zuri knew she could always rely on her in times like this. She knew it wasn't a sustainable solution, but it would have to do for now. She placed a long overdue phone call to Dr. Emeka. He told her the fibroids weren't aggressive and she had some time to consider her treatment options, which included just leaving them alone if they weren't growing. Apparently many women her age opted to have babies even with the fibroids, with the choice to take them out after delivery. All the options terrified her, but she felt better knowing she had a clearer plan to address her healthcare issues. Smart money lesson. Slay your debt. Debt can be a useful tool to attain financial success, but how you use it matters. Wealthy people use debt as a tool to leverage their investments and grow their cash flow, but poor people use debt to buy things that make rich people richer. Only borrow to acquire an asset that will appreciate in value. People with bad debt habits will typically go into debt buying things their income cannot support. They will borrow money to purchase big-ticket items that don't appreciate in value and most likely can't cover the cost of the debt over time. Exercise. Understand your debt and deal with it. 1. Acknowledge the total amount of your debt by making a list. 2. Set a repayment schedule that includes how much you owe each person or institution. 3. Prioritize your debts. Decide which ones are most important. This depends on your particular situation. You could slay the largest debt first to give you more confidence that the rest are manageable, or you could decide it is best to start with the debt charged with the highest interest rate, so the debt does not increase. Otherwise, it's best to pay the one with the most imminent wahala. In Zuri's case, her landlord was hounding her, and further non-payment could have led to eviction. 4. Set deadlines for each loan. There should be an estimate of how long it is going to take you to pay off each debt. 5. Decide how you plan to raise the money to pay. For example, deciding to cut your outflow to create room in your budget every month towards paying down your debt, finding another source of income, or selling off valuable items you don't necessarily need are all options to consider. 6. Think about the triggers that led you into debt in the first place and try to eliminate them. There's no point getting out of debt only to dive back in. Chapter 5. Surviving Emergencies. Zuri stirred as she heard her phone ringing. She had heard it ring a few times already, but she thought she was dreaming. As the phone stopped buzzing, she reached for it to look at the time. It was 4:25 a.m. Who could be calling at this ungodly hour? She tapped the green button on her iPhone that indicated she had 6 missed calls. It was Auntie UWA, her mother's sister in Benin. Wow, this woman couldn't be serious. Actually, why am I even surprised? Zuri thought. Her, Binny, relatives were the champions of doing this. Calling people early in the morning, or better still, showing up at your front door as early as 6 a.m. This was apparently to indicate how important the issue they wanted to discuss was, but the truth was, it was usually not that important. Zuri was used to Auntie Ua's random phone calls early in the morning for prayers. However, in reality it was unsolicited advice about how Zuri needed to find a husband and settle down so she could make her mother proud. Do you think she's happy tying Gelly every weekend to attend other people's children's wedding? Don't you want her to dance as mother of the bride too? All this career nonsense won't keep you warm at night. Oh, Abby, you don't want children. Time is going, oh, and you are not getting any younger. Look at your cousin, Neckpen. She's only 25 and she already has 3 children, she would say. Her lectures would go on for at least an hour. She suspected it was her mother that put Auntie UWA up to these antics, so it wouldn't look like she was putting pressure on her directly. The early morning phone calls had stopped for a while, but now this. How can she be calling me at 4:30 in the morning? Zuri fumed. How was this okay? Even for Auntie UWA, this was ridiculously early. She had never called before 6 o'clock. A.M. Before. When nobody died. HAAA. What if somebody died? Zuri panicked. Calm down. She chided herself out loud. This is Auntie UWA we are talking about. Nothing serious has happened. She's probably just in her feelings. I better get up and shower first. I can call her while I'm getting dressed for work, before she makes me late. Zuri dialed Auntie Ua's number and put the phone on speaker as she smoothed her shea and cocoa butter cream over her skin. Auntie UWA picked up after the first ring. Hello, Auntie. Good morning, Zuri said. Zuri, I've been calling you since morning. Why didn't you pick up? Sorry, Auntie. I was sleeping, Zuri said, needling her aunt just a bit. What kind of foolish sleep is that? If I call you 6 times, don't you know it's important? Auntie UWA yelled angrily, followed by some Binny words Zuri did not understand. I'm sorry, Auntie. Not really. It won't happen again. Please tell me what happened. It's your mother, oh, said Auntie UWA. My mum. What happened? Is she okay? Zuri cried out, putting her hands over her mouth. Her house caught fire last night. Auntie UWA shouted. Oh my God. Oh my God. Is Mummy okay? Please tell me she's okay. Zuri began to cry. Thank God for the neighbor's security that saw it in time. She's fine. A little shaken up because she inhaled some smoke, but the doctors say she's going to be okay. The house is thankfully not completely damaged. Only the living room and guest room were affected. Zuri collapsed in relief. How did this even happen? The air conditioner caught fire in the guest room downstairs. It spread a little to the living room, but they were able to stop it before it destroyed the rest of the house. Your mummy is fine. Don't worry. She's going to stay at my house for now. She's finally sleeping now, so I took her phone so people will not disturb her. You can call her later on. You'll come to Benin this weekend, Abby. She said in a tone that indicated it was an instruction, not a suggestion. Yes, Ma, I will come. Thank you for letting me know and for looking after Mummy, Zuri said. As she ended the conversation with her aunt and tried to focus on getting ready to go to work, she couldn't help but worry about her mother. When Zuri's dad died of cancer 8 years ago, her mother continued to live in Benin by herself. As the only one left in Nigeria, Zuri was the only one who saw her regularly. She was sure Auntie UWA would have called her brothers already, but she sent them both an email to notify them of the situation. She had been in the office since 7:30 a.m. There had been no traffic, which was quite strange for a Wednesday morning in Lagos. Still, she wasn't being very productive. She had been staring listlessly at quarterly reports for hours, but her mind was with her mum in Benin. The news of the fire had really scared her. She shuddered to think about what could have happened if they hadn't stopped it in time. The fire service in Lagos wasn't very efficient, not to talk of Benin. She actually wasn't even sure if there was a fire service there. Hey Zuri, Mr. Tunde said to tell everyone we are having a meeting in the conference room at 11 a.m., Sandra said as she walked past Zuri's desk. Why? It's Wednesday. Why would we have an all-staff meeting on Wednesday? Did something happen? Sandra shrugged. That's what he said, but he's being very cryptic about it. He won't tell anyone what it's regarding. Biko, just help me pass on the message to the people in your department. A little before 11, Zuri walked into the conference room behind a stream of other staff. She wondered what this impromptu meeting could be about. As she found a seat next to Obiangeli from accounting, she searched the faces of the senior partners for answers. They all looked grim. None of them were smiling, and even the ones who were usually friendly, like Mr. Obi, were acting a little weird. She caught his eye and smiled, but he looked away, and as she watched the senior partners exchange looks of pity, she sensed that there was something terribly wrong. Father Lord, I can't handle any more bad news today, Zuri thought as she looked around the room. People were whispering to themselves and drawing their own conclusions as to what could have happened. They're letting people go, in case you were wondering, Obiangeli said matter-of-factly. Really? Is she serious? Now, how do you know? Who told you? Zuri said. No one has to tell me. I work in the finance department. When there is more money going out than there is coming in and we can't pay our suppliers on time, it's not rocket science, they have to restructure. Zuri began to panic. Sales had been slow, but not slow enough for them to start sacking people. NA. Just last week, Alex from procurement had been complaining about how a combination of the Naira devaluation and the capital controls put in place by the Central Bank of Nigeria was making it much more expensive for the company to import some of the materials they needed to complete several of their real estate projects. She wondered what this meant for her. Even though she had stepped up her game in the last few weeks, she was still on probation with Mr. Tunde. She said a silent prayer and crossed her fingers. As Mr. Tunde walked into the room, people gradually got quieter. The tension could be cut with a knife. Mr. Tunde cleared his throat and then made his announcement. The company was letting 25 people go. A mixture of market forces, CBN policy and new banking regulation had forced the company into a precarious position, and the company needed to make some tough decisions in order to survive, Mr. Tunde explained. The company needed to tighten its belt. He began to read the names. The room was dead silent. He finished, thanked everyone and left. Then it hit her. Mr. Tunde had finished reading and hadn't said her name. Was this a long drawn-out prank or a narrow escape? In that moment, she made a vow to work harder and add value to the company. She was so grateful for this second chance. Today was truly a day of narrow escapes. First the fire, then this. As she turned to Obiangeli to say as much, she noticed she was crying. Zuri realized that because she was so nervous about her own name being called, she hadn't realized Obiangeli's name was on the list. Are you going to be okay? Zuri asked as she patted the woman's back. She let out a muffled, I'm fine, as she rushed out of the conference room. Zuri followed her to the ladies' room. She stood there quietly as she watched Obiangeli wash her face in the bathroom sink. I've given this company my best in the last 2 years. I've worked late nights and I'm one of the first to get in every morning. I just can't understand why I deserve to get sacked, Obiangeli cried. It's just not fair. I'm so sorry, Obiangeli. I'm really sorry. Is there anything I can do to help? Zuri said, trying to comfort her. Obiangeli stared at her. Is there anything you can do to help? She said with more than a hint of derision. I just lost my job. My family's only source of income. And I have 3 children who depend on me to feed them and pay school fees. It took me almost a year of job hunting to get this position, so I know it won't be easy to find another one. My family is basically in trouble because it's not like this salary was fantastic to begin with. It's a struggle to make ends meet every month, so we don't even have any substantial savings. So what can you do for me, Princess Zuri? Absolutely nothing. I would appreciate it if you left me alone. Zuri's face burned with embarrassment. I'm really sorry, she mumbled before leaving the bathroom. She didn't have time to think about Obiangeli's stinging comments though, because Sandra told her that Mr. Tunde wanted to see her in his office. Again. She had been right in the middle of searching for cheap flights to Benin. She could barely afford the return ticket given her money situation, but traveling by road would be a bad idea at this time of the year. The roads were extremely bad and the rainy season would have made it even worse. Plus, she would spend most of the time on the road instead of maximizing the time spent commiserating with her mother. Zuri had finally spoken to her, and more than anything, she was worried about not having enough funds to repair the damage to the house. Did he say why? Zuri asked. Sandra laughed. Does he ever say why? Just go, Joe. He is waiting for you. As Zuri walked to Mr. Tunde's office, she wondered if he was going to sack her privately. It didn't make any sense that they would fire a rule follower like Obiangeli and not fire Zuri, who broke the rules often, and had not exactly been Employee of the Year for quite some time now. She said a quick prayer as she knocked on Mr. Tunde's door. Zuri, come in. Take a seat. I'd like to have a word, Mr. Tunde said. Let me just get straight